G'day guys, back with the Circle, and I'm going to do a video like probably everyone else by now has done and talk about the new Forge World teasers for the upcoming open day. Obviously there is a new Horus Heresy book coming. It only took a couple of centuries to arrive. But, well, first things first, I'm actually happy to see something. Can't I just enjoy this moment, you know? Can I not just be happy that we got something? Alright, moment's over. Obviously, the people who come here want the truth. They don't want negativity. And for some reason, there's perception that we only ever talk negatively on this channel. It's completely and utterly false. We don't just talk negatively on this channel. In fact, in the Christmas special, I put up heaps and heaps of footage of positive things that I said. I think I devoted nearly half the Christmas special to it, in fact. And that was just some of the positive things we said this year. Or last year, I should say. But when it comes to the truth, sometimes we hear hard truths. Things we don't like, things we don't appreciate, things we might not want to hear because, you know, sometimes we find ourselves liking something, and the more we watch it, the more we examine it, we start to dislike it. I kind of felt this way about, say, The Force Awakens, Star Wars. There's a good example. I'm watching this movie and I'm like, oh, you know, it's great to have Star Wars back. The music's okay. You know, it's not John Williams' best. You know, it's no Duel of the Fates. But, you know, it's not bad. It's not bad. I'm enjoying this film. And then, you know, a few things happen and I wasn't a big fan of Rey from the get-go. I'm like, I don't like where this character's heading. You know, I came out of the movie going, it's alright. It's better than the prequels. And then the more I watched it, I just grew to despise the movie. And I've got it on Blu-ray. It's just been sitting in a drawer for like 2 or 3 years. I haven't had any desire to touch it since, sadly. Whereas I will routinely pop on Empire Strikes Back or, you know, any of the original Star Wars films, to be honest. I'll even pop on the prequels occasionally because they're just campy and, I don't know, I enjoy them. On some level, even though I recognise they are not artistically good by any stretch of the imagination, but at least they were original. And when it comes to Forge World, it's sort of the same thing. Games Workshop as a whole releases a lot of turds, but we can't bring ourselves to admit maybe they're turds. So, what I want to do today is talk about these new releases that have popped out. The Praetor combination set for the Night Lords. I want to talk a little bit about the politics or my thoughts behind it. The Leviathan for the Night Lords, of course, the Blood Angels, and the Dildo. Yes, that's what we're calling this. We're calling it the Dildo. Looks like a drill, it drills. Looks like a dildo, it dills. It's a Dildo. Alright. First things first. The Night Lords, power armoured commander, Praetor, that sort of thing. Now, what are the positives? First, I really like the weapon on this guy. It is a more elaborate version of the sort of chain weapons we've seen on the Night Lords previously. This sort of glaive type thing here, Nostroman chain glaive they call it. Yeah, looks like that, obviously, but it's neater. You know, it has a look of like one of the swords or blades of the Raptors in 40k, or the Warp Talons kit, with that sharp sort of axe blade on the tip, as well as having the chain sword working around the edges. That's really cool. Also, the pose. I actually don't mind the pose. I'm going to critique it, but I don't mind it. Because the thing is, I think if he was slightly elevated, like lifting off the ground, instead of just shuffling along, like dragging it, it would work better. Because the Night Lords are one of the more active legions. You picture them jumping through the air, leaping on their enemies, that sort of thing. Like, look at the Night Raptors, for example. You look at these guys and they're full of vibrancy, of action, of motion. And you don't get any of that with this guy. He's just sort of plodding along. And I like the imagery of someone like a gravedigger dragging the shovel or the scythe or something along behind them, almost like a zombie or something like that. But that works for the Death Guard Legion, in my mind. It doesn't really work for the Night Lords. So it's a bit strange of an option. Armor-wise, looks okay. I'm curious though why they didn't sort of go for the Night Raptors look with like the backpack and maybe even the flesh worn over the forearms like they have, and the way they've got the bones dangling off the body. Instead, they've gone for this sort of they've gone Batsy. Now, Batsy is a joke Kat and I have between ourselves. There's this Simpsons episode, the Halloween episode, where Mr. Burns hangs up a little bat in his window. Batsy, you've done it again. Something like that, he says. In any case, they've gone Batsy, and Batsy is the 40k Night Lords style. So it's these big, fat wings on top of their heads, these big, fat gargoyle wings. And when you look at the other 30k Night Lords, you look at Sevatar, and then you compare it to this guy. What's weird is these wings are curved backwards, whereas on Sevatar and the other guys, they recurve. On the 40k guys, on the metal character, they recurve, but on the generic guys, they forward curve. And so you end up with this bit of a contrast where he's starting to look more like the 40k Night Lords and their styling instead of like the 30k guys like Sevatar here. Now look at the skull prow of Sevatar's face. It's like a gargoyle skull, like a slightly animalistic with the upturned nose, and the eyes are like these thin menacing slits. You know, they're really pointy, really menacing even for Astartes power armor. The way he's looking, you know, it looks like he's glaring at his enemies almost. And the actual wings come in across the top of his eyes to form a frown. So again, adds more menacing look to his face. On this guy, they're just sort of slapped on either side of the head, like the old Thor wings, you know, the Asterix comics, for those who are familiar with it. These wings are just sort of slapped on each side of the guy's head, and it doesn't work. And the bat symbol on the chest doesn't work either. It just looks a bit derpy. It looks very similar to the old 40k one. Maybe it's a nod to it, I don't know, but I'm not impressed by it. Also, there's a weird thing going on. I'm hoping people can see the mouse cursor in this video. I've turned on that setting, but who knows. There's these hooks dangling off his chainmail. That's fine. How come there's no chainmail behind the hooks? Is that a sculpting error, or there's just like a flat silver backdrop behind? Now, it's not leather or something like that behind there. It's chainmails. Chainmail above the hook, chainmail below the hook, flat gap in between. And here's the thing that I'm talking about. Yeah, some might call it a nitpick. I call it poor attention to detail. Because that's not a fault that should be finding its way onto your models, you know? When they're produced and you're paying good money for this, because again, it's not a charity service, you're paying money for this product. Therefore, the product should be up to your standards, whatever they may be. If you're fine with the standard, that's fine. I'm not fine with that standard though. So if I got this model, I'd rectify it. I'd, you know, get a pin drill out and like a 0.2 drill bit, something like that, and just drill a couple of little circles into that gap inside the hooks, just to give it the appearance of chainmail. But really, how do you fuck chainmail up? Because you just did. So that's a bit disappointing. As I said, the pose is probably the killer. There's nothing wrong with the pose in general, but on a Night Lord, it doesn't work as well for me as it would on, say, a Death Guard. That said, all of those negative things, I actually like the model. I think it needs some tweaks. If a person was going to use this for themselves, yeah, I'd fix that chainmail, of course. I'd suggest just cutting the head clean off, replacing it with something like maybe helmeted head off Sevatar. Would work wonders for this model straight away. For the backpack, maybe keep it, maybe change it for one of the regular Night Raptor backpacks, which is a Mark II backpack, or even change it for just something on foot, because clearly he's not utilising the jump pack here, he is just on foot. So you could put something else on there. I think maybe an Anvilus pattern backpack, that's the sort of 40k style ones. Maybe even the backpack of this guy here would work really well on that model. Just to give him a bit more width, because right now he's a very thin model. Like he's everything. Basically, his whole body is directly over the top of his knees. His arms aren't spread out or anything like that. So the model's quite compact. So by adding that backpack in, giving him a bit more of a wider stance, it will make him look more menacing, more imposing on the battlefield. That's my opinion. Feel free to disregard it, guys. So everything I said about that guy, you can pretty much apply to this guy here. The Batsy stuff. He's so very plain, and yet, despite all that plain looks about him, he is still a Night Lord. Now, I like what they've done with the shin, the right shin, with like the little spikes on it. I perhaps would have preferred more of the Sons of Horus style spikes, where they're sort of like a little pyramid shape, but perfectly serviceable, not dissing it at all. I'm just saying what I would have preferred. Whereas on the other hand, I think the Volkite option on the wrist doesn't work for me, because, well, okay, in practical terms, it allows the model to shoot a weapon when he needs two hands to use his combat weapon. Okay, I get that. But it is such a big, bulky weapon to put onto a Tartarus armoured character. Now, it's a bit strange because Night Lord's Atramentar, if I remember my fluff correctly, are Cataphracti Terminators, and this guy's a Tartarus Terminator. I think Sevatar covered off on this in his video, so that does mean that I'm right. So, in which case, you'd probably want this character to be in Cataphracti armor to suit those, but he's not, he's in Tartarus armor, and so Tartarus does not look good, or as good as Cataphracti does when it's made big and bulky. Cataphracti wears things like Volkites and Chain Fists and stuff like that really well. Tartarus, not so much. Now that said, doesn't make it a bad model by any means. The trophy rack, I like that design on top. I think that the bat's wings could have been done better on the model. Maybe even sort of like the way the Thousand Suns head crests are placed on their miniatures, how they come up above the torso. Maybe that would have been a good place to put the bat's wings on this model. Where these sort of like little lights and that are either side of the head, maybe they could have put some bat's wings coming up here. Maybe recurve them outwards instead. I don't know, something interesting. But the one thing that clearly lets this model down, and the easiest thing in the world to rectify, is the left-hand weapon. Oh boy. So, you look at Constantin Veldor, the head of the Custodian Guard, and pretty much everyone at this point agrees it's way over the top. Doesn't look very good. It's just got too much shit going on, and the weapon makes no sense. All the depictions of him, he's running around with a guardian spear. All of a sudden he has this massive, like, Eastern European bardish, like a peasant farmer or a serf. Same sort of thing with this guy. He's, what, you're too good to use a Nostrum chainglaive like this guy is? Like, even the previous Praetor model had a really nice chainglaive. You know? And then we get to this guy, and he's just got this. It's like someone just took a bunch of bits from their bits box. Like, it's not just a chain weapon, it's also got like an axe head, but it's at the bottom of the chain axe head, and then he's got like another hook on the back end of the shaft or haft of the spear or glaive. It's too much going on, too busy. Swap it out for a Thunderhammer, which is an actually useful weapon, which Nostrum and chain glaives. You're not getting your money's worth if you're putting that on your Praetor. Let's get that straight. It is a waste. You want to be using Paragon Blades, Thunderhammers. They're the two weapons of choice for a Praetor. Either you're going to hit them with the Thunderhammer, and their ancestors are going to hurt because you hit them so hard, or the Paragon Blades, you're going to hit them so fast that, well, I don't know, Emperor's children will weep with happiness, something like that. So, that's the way to go. And as I say, it's an easy fix. The model is not ruined by that weapon. The model as presented is ruined by that weapon. So the easy fix? Don't use that weapon. That hand and that weapon is probably a separate part. Almost certainly separate part at the wrist. Therefore, you can either take your regular Terminator chainglaive if you're really that way inclined, or, my personal suggestion, put a fucking Thunderhammer or a Paragon Blade hand on there instead, and you'll be much happier for it. You'll get a much more useful character out of it. Free advice, as always, feel free to ignore. Alright, next one we've got here is the Leviathan Dreadnought. And when I was looking at this, there was a lot of things that stuck out to me. The first thing, well, it's obvious. There's a gigantic torso stuck to the torso of this Dreadnought. And I'm like, that's weird. I don't really think much more of it, apart from the fact he looks he looks like a healthy colour for a dead guy whose blood would have all drained from the corpse. I prefer something a little bit more like, my Return of the Living Dead type thing. But, the more I looked at it, the more this started to annoy me, for two reasons. First, I picked on the Blood Angels for having a Leviathan Dreadnought. I'm like, look, there's no need for legions to be getting individual Leviathan Dreadnoughts right now, when they don't have basic shit like characters for every legion, or weapons options for every legion, important things. So, to me, it's a waste of resources building this. Then, little things stuck out. He's got the cards attached to his right leg, but the cards are all perfectly aligned. I feel like there should be a skew, like maybe the second one down should be tilted off on a bit of an angle. It's too pristine, too perfect, too like a robot designed this Dreadnought. Then you get the icon on the right shoulder and the Legion numerals on the left, and they look almost like etched brass or a resin cast icon. Something you could just stick on there. It doesn't look like as smoothly flowing from the hull, I suppose I'm getting at, as, say, their Contemptor Dreadnought. Where the features on this Contemptor, the trim, things like that, the chains hanging off him, they look a lot more organic. And I know that's a weird way of saying it, but it's like they're naturally meant to be there. Whereas the chains and stuff on this Dreadnought, they don't have that same feeling. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe this is a regular Leviathan, and this person has actually just converted it up this way. That's why everything looks like it's been just slapped onto the outside. Maybe it was. Maybe this isn't a new kit at all, because everything just looks like it's above the surface of the miniature. It's not at all molded into or recessed into the surface. It's very bizarre, but it looks wrong to my eye. That said, overall it's okay, but the torso of the Marine. So on the Contemptor, it works really well. Having heads and stuff like that hanging off it, trophies, they work fine. I think I've got 3 of these, I should know. I think they're all removable as well, these trophies. You can sort of place them where you want or in whatever order you like. And I think that's kind of like maybe why these look like their surface details are slapped on, especially this Marine corpse, because I think it is a detail you can actually remove and slap on in other places. But the Marine is so big and bulky, it doesn't look right positioned there. It should probably be positioned on top of the torso, maybe dangling off down the top of the shoulder. It shouldn't be really slapped right on the front there. Nitpick, right? Well, prepare for the ultimate of nitpicks, people, because it's not one that I've seen people mention yet. I could be totally wrong. But what makes Marines unique? It's the organs and the upgrades they undergo, right? One of these things is the Black Carapace. So, the Black Carapace is a set of cybernetic implants that are attached to the bone and nerves of these Astartes. And one of the bones that Marines have is a ribcage. The ribcage on Marines is fused into a single solid piece of bone. It's part of what makes them so tough. You can't go between the ribs, you're hitting solid rib. This Marine, hanging off the Dreadnought here, and it is a Marine, make no mistake, has ribs. This Marine is not put together quite right. And to a person sculpting, probably didn't even occur to them. Didn't even occur to me until the 3rd or 4th time I looked at this model. Marines have a fused single rib. Why does this guy have an exposed rib cage with multiple ribs showing? If he has an exposed rib cage, it should be just a big white bone plate. but he doesn't. Interesting. Just something I noticed. Yeah. I thought I'd point it out because it really seemed bizarre to me. There are aspects I really love on this model, by the way. On most of the chains hanging off the model look pretty good. And the spikes on top of the torso are fantastic. I really rate the way the spikes are put on there. The chain and the heads hanging off sort of the chest area underneath the Legion icon looks fantastic. The Legion icon itself, the less said the better. Anyway, the Night Lords. Why are they here? I'm wondering, because shouldn't the Night Lords be waiting until the Dark Angels book? And I've got the feeling that back when things were structured, that, oh, you know, Dark Angels and Night Lords are going to be in the Angelus book. That was probably the plan. They probably started working on these designs then. Well, now we've got to this point, they're like, oh, we've made these designs, we may as well release them. That's my feeling of what's happened, because the plan's changed, and the current book coming out is meant to have absolutely nothing to do with the Dark Angels and the Night Lords, so it's got me fucked. Alright, Blood Angels, Terminators. What do I think of this? I really like them, but something is off to my eye, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I'm going to throw out a few suggestions, a few theories. Bear with me, guys. So, I like the fact they've got like the blood drops on all the strapping around them. I like the togas they're wearing. I don't mind the shields. It's a bit strange to see kite shields on infantry. Kite shields throughout real history are more of a cavalry thing, because you can't have these big, bulky, round shields on cavalry. You know, if you're an infantryman, you want the biggest shield you can get your hands on, realistically. You know, something like a Roman shield, or like either your auxiliary or your legionary, it doesn't really matter. You know, scutum, whatever. You want a big shield. These shields would work really well on like jet bikes, you know, that sort of thing. To have them on Terminators, they're not really covering much. That's a nitpick, total nitpick, of course. It's just weird. Not what I expected, but I like it. So, what is off about them? Okay, first things first. Why does one of them have a spear? Now, the spear is the Emperor's Children Phoenix Terminator thing. I mean, if memory serves correct, that's what they're sort of known for, is the Phoenix Spears, inspired by the Custodian's own weapons. They look really great, whereas this spear I'm a bit torn on. At the moment, you know, it might pan out to be really good once we get another angle of it. But realistically, let's look at some other Blood Angels that we've got out there, specifically some 40k ones. What do we notice? We notice things like Lightning Claws. Look at Gabriel Seth. He has a gigantic chainsword. That's the sort of weapon I sort of expect on a Blood Angel Sergeant. Something like a giant chainsword would just be fucking awesome and brutal, you know, as a character weapon. Heavy chainsword in the hands of Terminator could probably have AP3, AP2, you know. Could be a very cool weapon, something different to what the other legions have got. No one else is running around with giant chainswords. The closest is the Night Lords with their chain glaives. So a heavy chainsword that models in Terminator armor could use, you know, the Flesh Terrors would be great. Instead, we've gone for the more Emperor's Children styling here. Not a bad thing, just strange. We also have the Assault Cannon. I think the better choice for a weapon here would probably have been a Heavy Flamer, or maybe even a Multi-Melter. The Blood Angels are known for their use of Inferno pistols, things like that, and they like their Flamers, they like, you know, their Baal Predators. The Flamer would have been better instead of the Assault Cannon. It's always struck me as a bit odd that out of all the legions they could give the Assault Cannon to in the Heresy, Blood Angels is one of them. Just odd as a choice. The models themselves, I like the styling. I don't think they're over the top. They are very fancy, yes, but they're not completely over the top. The shields, though, are starting to get up there. And the thing is, in the stories we talk about how the Emperor's children are so vain, it looks like they've tried to make themselves look as fancy as possible, but it doesn't quite work. Whereas the Blood Angels, they seem to just look pretty naturally. Well, it's sort of the opposite, because I look at the Phoenix Terminators and I love them. I absolutely adore them. And the details are all really fine, they're really refined, you know, the little fleur-de-lis icons and the laurel wreaths and things like that around the shins, you know, they're really small and perfect, and very fine detailing has gone into these miniatures. These Aquillas across their chests, they have all these tiny little cracks in the Aquillas, the Palatine Aquila on the wing, the jewels, the way that the eagle's foot grabs the jewel, looks beautiful. And then we get to these guys, and these shields have just this big, stumpy icon of the Blood Angels just sticking out the shield. It's just this big, thick icon. Like, again, like the etched brass analogy I gave on the Untitled Dreadnought. It's like it's just mushed into the surface. I don't know. It's like it should have been recessed in and be a much finer icon instead. More plain, perhaps. I think it's just so big and so chunky just to fill up the shield. Like, when they designed it, the sculptor didn't want to leave any blank space. You know, all blank spaces are boring. We need to fill it with something. I'm not trying to shit on their work either here. I think they've definitely gone down the right road with the styling. Just, it's chunky. Then the posing on the models. And I think that's the greatest problem, because they're like 40K's Gilliman. You have Cataphracti, they're meant to be these real thick, imposing, sturdy looking space marines. And they don't look that. These guys have really thin legs. The only one that looks really imposing and menacing is this guy on the right side, the lower right side. The guy to his left, the guy with the assault cannon at the back, they're very top heavy. They're like a big triangle shape with these massive pauldrons, and they've got these tiny little legs like kicking out. You compare that to the Emperor's children, and the Emperor's children, like especially this guy on the right, he's got these big wide stance. You know, like he's dynamic. Like they're trying to make these Blood Angels look dynamic, but he's pulling it off. He's got that wide stance, sure footing. He's about to take a big swing with his blade. It's all in the body language, right? This model doesn't have that. He's not trying to take the big wide swing. It's like he's drawn the weapon in close to the chest. He's almost like pulling into himself, and then he's taking this dainty little footstep. The legs are like Cataphracti styling, but Tartarus-sized legs on Cataphracti torsos, and it doesn't look quite right to my eye. Now, again, it could totally be me, but I've had a few people sort of mention it to me as well, where they're like, yeah, you're right, the legs are a bit weird. And, you know, let's look at some of the other Blood Angels stuff we've got. Let's look at this Blood Angels Praetor, the one in Tartarus armor, who's a nice model. You know, not my favourite, but it's nice. So, compare him and his wide stance. He's got that sort of Phoenix Terminator stance. It's this wide, sure-footed, confident stance. And it looks totally different to the stances on these guys. They don't have that wide, confident stance. It doesn't look right, whatever they've done here. I'm not quite sure what it is. Now, I'd say it's up to how you pose the torso and legs together, which way you put them. Well, I'm pretty damn certain. In fact, I'm going to say I'm 100% certain. These torsos and legs are one piece, because of the way that the togas or cloaks flow between the two halves. If the chest and the legs were separate parts, the torsos wouldn't line up at all. So they have to be one piece, or at least, you know, two pieces that only fit together in one particular way. That really limits the options you've got here when it comes to spicing them up. Also, the head does not look great on him, but that's a fucking nitpick. So, yeah, that's problematic. And this is another one of those funny things with the legions, like I was mentioning a little earlier, where you have a Praetor who's meant to go in your units of Terminators, and he's in different armor. So it's like he has the worst armor save in the squad. He has a 5+, they've got a 4+ involved, maybe even better, because they've got these storm shields. Yeah, it makes no sense. He can run down enemies, but these guys can't because they're basically slow and purposeful. It's it doesn't make sense what they've done here. So it's not the only Legion either. It's not a new thing with Forge World. Take for example the Iron Father in the Iron Hands. Gorgon Terminators are the Terminators of choice. Gorgon Terminator armor is not an option for your characters, and the model comes in Cataphracti armor. Yeah, it doesn't work too well. And it's like that for a couple of Legions. They get characters that are in armor that doesn't work with their squads. Bizarre choice. Very bizarre choice. Fine if you're going with regular Legion Terminators, because you can armor them however you like. But, yes, in this case it's odd that you've got Cataphracti and they're going to be joined by a character, and the character's going to have the worst armor save of them all. And, frankly, there's no reason, because he can't run down things, because he's tied to the squad. So you may as well just give him a better armor save and put him in the Cataphracti. I mean, he can Overwatch, because that one combi bolter is going to mean everything. I mean, sometimes it might. Shoot myself in the foot with that one, but generally that one combi bolter overwatching isn't going to mean shit. Which again is another strange choice. We've got assault cannons on a squad that can't overwatch. It's a waste of firepower. You have a squad that's clearly designed for close combat with swords and shields and things like that, and then you go and waste one of their potentials and lower his armor save by giving him an assault cannon. It's just bizarre choices all around with these sculpts. Alright, I've harped on enough. What's something great here? The Drilldo. Yeah, it looks great. That's all I've really got to say about it. It's just a termite that blows up, as far as I know. Probably a one-use only per game type dealie. Probably like the Death Strike missiles and the Imperial Guard in 40k. Or the, copyright Astra Militarum, copyright Games Workshop 2015 or whatever the fuck. It looks nice. It looks logical. Looks like something that lives in the same family as the termite. Yay! We gotta win! We gotta win, people! So, yeah. Overall thoughts, recapping. I don't mind this Praetor. Cut the head off. Put a better one on. I don't mind this Praetor. Get rid of the left hand. Put a better one on. I don't mind this Leviathan Dreadnought. Cut off the Marine, don't put another one on. I like these Blood Angels Terminators. Pick the posing wisely, arm them wisely, don't use that bare head, or at least if you do, figure out a way to paint it or pose it that looks better, because it doesn't look very good right now. And Drilldo's gonna Drilldo. Bring your KY jelly. Thank you everyone for watching this episode. I hope you found it informative. Hope you got something out of it. I know I did, because, yeah, just before I recorded it, I couldn't believe it when I saw that Marine with his ribcage. Such a silly little thing, silly little nitpick, but, you know, these things count. If you want to build up the hype of the universe and say, oh, go out and spend all this money to recreate the battles of the Horus Heresy, and, you know, if I'm paying thousands of dollars, I want my product to be damn well perfect. Make with the outer circle. See you all next time.